Good morning. Today we are continuing with percentages. We are working on CO40. I can find a percentage using a proportion. Remember, the most important number when working with percentages is that 100. Centi means 100. So we want that 100 as our denominator. So proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equivalent, such as 2/5 is equal to 6/10, or x over 12 is equal to 25/30. Those would be equivalents. A percent is a ratio whose denominator is 100. The symbol for the percent is that percent sign. So 17 over 20, we want to get to 100 as our denominator. To go from 20 to 100, we multiply it by 5. Whatever we multiply the denominator by, we have to multiply our numerator by. So 17 times 5 gives us our 85 hundredths. And whenever there's that 100 as the denominator, the numerator becomes our percent. You can use proportions to solve percent problems. You can represent A is P% of B. Whew, that sounds confusing. With the proportion A over B equals P over 100, where A is part of the base B and percent, or P over 100, is the percent. Now that's the way the book explained it. I learned it a different way. I learned it as the part over the whole is equal to the percent over 100. So the part is the same. They say A is part, so I just call it part. The base, I call that the whole. That's the whole amount that you have. That base amount is the whole amount. Is equal to your percentage, that P, percentage over the whole. So the way that I learned it, and that I taught the pre-algebra class, and we had our percentage unit, we had it just a little while ago. It's P over W equals percent over 100. P is part, W is whole, percent over 100. So finding a percent, what percent of 3 is 1? So what don't we know? We don't know that percent. That's what we're trying to find, over 100. So what percent of 3? 3 is our whole number. That's our base number, that whole number. So that goes on the bottom. And we want to know what percent 1 is of it. So our part is the 1. So it's 1/3 equals the percent over 100. So we want to get that percent by itself, because that's what we're trying to find. So think about when we had our variables. If that was a variable, we wanted to get it by itself. So if we had our variable divided by our 100, what's the opposite of dividing? Well, multiplying. So we're going to multiply both sides by 100 because we want to get that percent by itself. 100 divided by 100 is 1. So we have that percent alone. 100 times 1 is 100. And we still have that 3 on the bottom. Am I done?
No.
What do I have to do? Well, yeah. 100 over 3, I can't leave it as a fraction. So Nolan, what would I do?
That's 33.
Yeah, 100 divided by 3 gives me 33.3%. So 1 is 33 and a third percent of 3. Does that make sense? So, I don't know, we're going to keep doing examples of it, because when we first get a formula thrown at us, part over whole equals percent over 100, sometimes it takes a while practicing it to use it. Nolan?
But like 3/3, wouldn't that be 99 point?
What do you mean 3/3?
Like as a fraction, when you go like 3/3, like how 1/3 is 33 and 2/3 is 66.
Yeah.
But 3/3 is 100, but wouldn't it be 99?
Because 1/3 isn't just 33. It's 33.3 repeating.
So wouldn't it be 99.9 repeating?
I see where you're coming from. But look at it this way. If we have 3 divided by 3, 1. Okay. All right. So let's do a little more practice with this. Oops. I can't scroll up on the board. So what percent of 40 is 16? So remember, we had part over the whole equals percent over 100. So what percent? So we're looking for our percent, which we know is over 100. What percent of 40? So 40 is our whole number. Is 16. 16 is that part of it. So we're just filling the pieces in to that formula. So our proportion is 16/40ths. So what percent of 40 is 16? So think of it as if we had taken a test and we got 16 right out of 40. You've seen teachers write that on your test. 16 out of 40. What percent is that? How can I figure out my grade? What would be that percent? 16 divided by 40. Okay. That 100 helps us to put it into a percentage. Because 16 divided by 40 is going to be a decimal. If we multiply it by that 100, then we get the actual percent, because a percent isn't a decimal. So Peyton, what is 16 divided by 40? Tell me what the decimal is.
2.5.
Not 2.5. 16.
0.25.
0.25 is what you get when you do 16 divided by 40. Now multiply that by 100. What's 0.25 times 100? Will? No. Landon? Nope. Aiden?
0.250.
Nope. It is 0.25.
He said, wait.
You said 0.250. All you did was put a 0 at the end. That didn't change our number. 0.25 times 100. Oh, 25. Okay. Times 100. You got 2 zeros. You're moving that decimal place over 2 places. Okay. So if we do 16 divided by 40, we get 0.25. It's not 0.25%. We have to multiply it by that 100 to know that it's going to be 25%. So that's why we're multiplying by 100. That's going to give us what our percentage is. What percent of 400 is 52? So again, we have our percent. That's what we're looking for. What am I going to put on the top? What's my numerator, Brielle? Is that the part? 52 is our part. Okay, we got 52 out of 400. So 400 is my whole. That goes on the bottom. That whole, that big number, how many do we have all together? We have 400 all together. We're going to put 52 on top because we only have 52 of that 400. So 52 goes on top. That's the part. 400 goes on the bottom with the whole. We're looking for that percentage. So to get that 100 off of the bottom, multiply it each side by 100. So now we just have our percentage because we don't want it as a decimal. If we just did 52 divided by 400, we would have that decimal. We don't want it as just a decimal. What is 52 times 100 divided by 400?
Wait, what did you just say? You said
52, we're doing this part,
times 100.
times 100
Yeah.
divided by 400.
105. 13. 10.5. What?
What is with your calculator?
So-
Calculator.
52 out of 400, that's a small amount out of a large amount. So my percentage is going to be small. 13% is a pretty small number, right? Because 52 out of 400, that's not much taken out of that 400.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that would be a horrible test grade. You are correct. Nobody wants to get 13% on a test. Is it making sense?
Yeah.
So there's the two different ways you can do it. You can plug in that part over the whole equals percent over 100. You can divide that part by the whole and then multiply by the 100, or you can multiply by the 100 and then divide it by that
I
whole.
see what I did wrong. I put 42, not 52.
Okay, there are some common percentages that we should know that go with our fractions. 12.5% would be 1/8. 33 1/3% is 1/3. 37.5% is 3/8. 62.5% is 5/8. 66 2/3% is 2/3. 87.5% is 7/8. These are just some common percentages and fractions. So when it comes time for test taking, which won't be for a little while, but when it comes time for test taking, you might want to put these common percentages on your help sheet. Okay, so just thinking ahead, these are just common ones that we can know. What number is 20% of 525? So now they're telling us our percentage. So 20 is the percent over 100 of 525. That's our whole, that base number, our whole. We don't know the part. That's what we're trying to find now, is the part. So what am I going to do to solve that? How do I get the P by itself? How do I get that part by itself?
20 times 100 and then divided by.
Why would I do 20 times 100?
Or is it 20
'Cause I'm-
divided by 100?
I want to get the part by itself. So if it's the part divided by 525, what's the opposite of that?
I mean, what?
Multiplying. So I'm going to multiply each side by that 525. And then you're right, then divide it by that 100. But if we're multiplying 525 divided by 525, we're left with just that P. So 20 times 525, and then divide it by 100, we get that 105. So 105 is 20% of 525. So we just have to figure out what's our part, what's our whole, what's our percentage over 100, and figure out which one we're solving for. Then we're doing the same algebra that we did in the last unit. Solve for that missing piece. So if you were dividing by 525, then you need to multiply by it. So we're just reversing it. Line up quietly for the fire drill.